Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the second part of the session on structuring a research paper. So, in the first part of my presentation, I was telling you about what are the different aspects, components that you need to take care of in all kinds of papers. Whatever may be the subject, whatever may be the discipline you are working with, what are the common things that we need to be addressed? Maybe starting from title, authors' affiliations, abstract, keywords, then use of abbreviations, use of tables, use of figures, and acknowledgement, then conflict of interest, ethical approval, list of references. So all those general things were discussed in the first part. The second part of my presentation, I would like to concentrate on two things. So what are the various components of a research paper that may be published by the faculty members and research scholars of the different disciplines of social science? At the same time, the faculty members and research scholars, those working in science subjects. Fine. So I will have two different kind of presentations. So let me start with the structuring a research paper in social sciences. See, what is the format commonly being used in social science research papers? You can see here: introduction, review of literature, methodology, findings, discussion, conclusion, reference according to dash, any style, whether you follow APA style or MLA style or Chicago style or Trobian style, any style, whatever style you are following or you are instructed to follow, you follow. Then comes appendices if required. We'll discuss about these things one by one. First is introduction. See, as far as social science paper is concerned, the introduction should have a set. It should set the paper. That means it should work as a kind of a lead-in paper. It should work as a background information for the paper, what you're going to do in your research area. And what are the various components we are going to include in the introduction part of any social science research paper. So predominantly, you should identify the problem, what you are going to explore in the current study. If you're doing a study on drug addicting habits among the adults of metropolitan cities, so what is the problem you are exploring? First thing. And secondly, you should tell why it is important to do a research on this particular topic. Why, what situations warrant me? What circumstances demand me? And what situations compel me to take up this particular topic? Why this particular problem is important? And once you are able to tell these two things, then you'll be able to express the purpose of your research very, very clearly and concisely. So three things are there. You should identify the problem which you are going to explore. And you should tell the audience why it is important to study about this particular problem. And thirdly, you should tell what are the various purposes and objectives of your study in a much more very, very simpler and concise manner. Fine. That comes introduction. Then comes the review of literature. You know very well, any social science research, the backbone of which is related reviews. Okay. See, if you're doing a research on internet use pattern of research scholars of central universities, and you need to identify what are the previous studies done in the same field. What are the objectives, what are the methodologies followed by the previous researchers? What kind of data collection instrument they used? What are the findings? What are the suggestions? And what is the research gap that they have left for the future researchers? You need to conduct a very, very systematic and analytical review of literature. This review of literature may cover the definitions, histories, or theories of the relevant field of study. So for example, if I'm doing a research on information literacy, my review may contain historical background of the concept of information literacy. Apart from that, you can talk about various theories or standards that are prevailing as on today on information literacy. Fine. And secondly, you should make kind of connections between similar research studies. So if you are reviewing around 50 research articles, then you have to find out what are the studies that are similar to each other in respect of few findings. And what are studies that are contradicting to each other in respect of very specific purposes of your study. Fine. So that kind of establishing either similar relations or contradictions also taking place in review. See, the most important purpose of doing a review of literature is to show the progress of research taking place in this particular field. So if you take a particular field and prepare a review for the last 20 years, 2010 to 2020, this 20 years review will explicitly tell us what kind of progress is being taking place in this particular field of study. You can very well understand. And apart from that, what are the various hypotheses you can derive from all these studies which can be used for your study? And please remember, the review of literature should be concise. It need not be so lengthy. It should be concise. At the same time, whatever resources you are using for your review of literature, all those resources are to be cited properly. Please understand, use any style, both in-text citation and list of references. You have to mention properly in any chosen style manual whatever resources used in your review of literature. Fine. So basically, people have got two different kinds of presenting review of literature. First method is if you're having some 3 articles for your review purpose, you say Ramasamy 2012 conducted a study so and so. Kandasamy 2012 conducted study so and so. Parthasarathi in 2014 conducted study so and so. In 3 paragraphs, whatever they told, you can present it. This is one kind of presentation. In another kind, what they say is that nowadays you have to have a topical or categorical presentation of reviews. So you go through all the 3 reviews, you find out what are the areas on which they are given findings. Based on those categorical ideas or concepts, you split your reviews. For example, you can give 5 headings like this, based on what you have reviewed from those 3 articles. Maybe something like that. Purpose of using internet, frequency of using internet, experience in using internet, the method of searching they followed, the problem they encountered. So you have 5 headings. Under these 5 headings, you tell what are 3 articles talking about. So that kind of categorization is gaining momentum in all these days. Fine. You can see this is a typical way of writing literature review. So these are the one particular idea which is being supported by these many authors, and Bold and so are their review, and this way individually you give review. Okay, one particular author highlighted, another one suggested, the other one believed, other one observed. So individually you say this is a bit old style of writing reviews. Fine. So once you are writing the reviews, after systematical review of literature, you can come to a conclusion on the hypothesis that can be framed for your research work. Fine. So what is hypothesis? Nothing but a tentative assumption. So before you start doing your research work, you have an idea, you believe that this is what going to happen. See, for example, when you're doing a research on use of WhatsApp among male and female students, you have a basic assumption that male students may use WhatsApp for more number of hours than female students. So you expect this particular thing to happen in your research work, but this may happen, this may not happen. That you'll be able to finalize only after collecting data and analyzing it. Either you approve or disprove the hypothesis, whatever you set for your research work. But typically a hypothesis can be in a single sentence. Normally, it can be given either in the alternative form or the null form. But normally we are presenting the hypothesis in the null form. Okay. For example, there is no significant relationship between secondary school attended and students' ICT literacy skills. A simple hypothesis, a null hypothesis that's to be tested after collecting the data. Fine. So you are very clear with the introduction part. What are the things you have to give in the introduction part? Then comes review of literature, how you write review of literature. Then comes hypothesis. Good. Then very importantly, you should talk about the method. What is the method you adopted for conducting your research study? People say your method section should have these 4 components. What are they? One is participants, design, measures, and procedures. See, dear friends, as I told you, these headings, the names of these headings may differ from study to study. They may give different names. But basically, this is what you are going to include in case of social science research papers. You can ask a question, sir, to what extent we should go into deep of all these 4 aspects? Whether you should be very precise or we should be very comprehensive. So dear participants, please understand. See, whatever information you give should enable other researchers also to be able to replicate your study in their environment. So you have to ensure that with the help of the information provided by you in the method section, other researchers are able to replicate your study in their own environment. So that guarantee you should give. Fine. So one is participants. In social sciences, we talk about people. So you should tell exactly what is your demographic population. What are their socioeconomic characteristics? Maybe their age, their gender, their experience, marital status, their nativity, their computer awareness. All those things can become part and parts of their socio-cultural economic background of the participants. And secondly, design. So what is the design you have decided to use for your research purpose? Whether you want to conduct an experiment, or you want to do a kind of a survey, or you want to go about with interview, or you want to go for a behavioral observation. For example, if you have decided to observe and see how your students are pursuing their studies in the absence of a teacher, either you can go for participant observation or non-participant observation. If it is a participant observation, you can go for covert observation or not or overt observation. So many different kinds of things are there. So you should decide what kind of research design will be more apt for your research purpose. You have to choose your design accordingly. And many a time, your design will be based on your objectives and the kind of population you have. Then comes measures. So what is the measure you are going to use for collecting data from the respondents? Whether you are going to make use of a kind of questionnaire, or you are going to mail the questionnaire, or you are going to send the Google form to collect the questionnaire, or you are going to conduct a face-to-face interview, or you are going to conduct a kind of a group interview, or you are going to have a checklist with you and go around and tick the checklist to find out the data, or you are just going to plainly observe. So what data collection instrument you are going to follow in your study for the purpose of collecting the data from the sample? That you should make it very clear. Then comes procedure. So what is the procedure you follow in conducting this particular study? Maybe you can talk about your sampling procedure, whether you are following random sampling or non-random sampling or convenient sampling or judgment sampling or snowball sampling. So what kind of sampling you follow, how you have chosen the participants, and how you have administered the questionnaire, the data collection instrument. So you can say that I went and got the permission from the principal, I approached the librarian, I met the student, I handled the questionnaires, I clarified the doubts. So whatever methodology you followed in administering the data collection instrument. So all these things can be provided in a logical manner in the procedure section. Okay, fine. So now method section is over. Then comes findings. You can call it as results. See, whatever methodology you follow, the result of all your conducting the research is to get the results, findings. If you want in social sciences, the information can be organized in the terms of tables and figures, no problem. And please understand that you should give only the results of your research work in this findings section. So you are not going to discuss why the result has turned out in this particular way, why not that way, we are not going to discuss. In findings part, we are just going to report the findings of your research work, that's it. Okay, but if you are using tables and figures, make sure that you are referring to those tables, you are referring to those figures, and you are explaining them briefly in your findings section. Because I told you, whenever you're using a tables and figures, please understand every figure, every table should have a label, should have a name. Okay. If you're using the tables, then tables can be named as table 1, table 2, table 3, or table 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. And you should have a table number and table name that is to be written at the top, above the table. But if you're preparing a figure, then the caption, the figure title should be given just below the figure, not above that. Fine. Okay. So please understand these two things. Okay. And apart from that, apart from giving the name, at the bottom of the table, you can have something called a note. Okay, you can write note, and whatever information you want to convey to your readers, you can make it very, very clear in the note section. For example, what kind of things can be given in the note section? What things can be explained in terms of social sciences? So many things are there. For example, you can, I'm sorry. You can talk about your experimental conditions. You can give a note. If you are talking about statistical tools, Then you can talk about statistical information as a part and parcel of your notes. Okay. So notes are given below the table. For example, you can tell in the note, you can give it very clearly, how many times the experiment was conducted. If you have used some kind of abbreviation in the table or figure, you can give the full form of those abbreviations in the note section. And what is the statistical test used? And whether you conducted one-tailed statistical test or you conducted two-tailed statistical test, you can explain. So one-tailed t-tests are for directional hypothesis. Two-tailed tests are conducted to test the non-directional hypothesis. You can talk about that. You can tell what is the p-value used, whether you used 5% significance or 1% significance, you can take. And if at all use some kind of asterisk mark in the table at the figure, you can give meaning for that asterisk mark or that particular concept in the note section. So note section or the word note, which is written just below the table, can be used to explain all these important points. Fine. Once findings are over, then comes the most very important thing called discussion. So you should discuss, you should explain your results, you should interpret your results. You got some results. Okay. For example, you say that male students are spending more time on internet than female students. Okay, fine. This is a finding. So you should explain this finding. Why this happened so? Why not the other way? What may be the possible reasons? Why this always happens in the case of male members spending more time? So that kind of interpretation should be there. So this kind of explanation, this kind of interpretation that you give for your findings, that will make the readers understand how well you have understood your research work. So have much time to be spent on discussion section. And the only one question that is to be answered by your discussion section is that, what is the significance of the results? Okay, you got some results, but what is significance of all these results? This can be answered in 5 different headings. Okay, one is, you should take in your discussion section, what is the result of hypothesis testing? Whether you are accepting a hypothesis or you are rejecting a hypothesis. If you are accepting it, what may be the reason for that? If you are rejecting it, what may be the possible causes for the rejection? You should tell. No problem. Let the hypothesis be accepted or not accepted. That doesn't matter. But you should explain why it has happened so. And secondly, why might the results have turned out that way? You get a lot of results. Apart from hypothesis, we get a lot of findings. Why those findings have happened in this particular way? Why not the other way? What will be the reason? If you feel that actually I didn't expect this kind of result, but I got the result maybe because of my sampling strategy, maybe because of the sampling design I chosen for my particular study, or maybe because of the procedures I followed for this particular study, the result has come this way. And you can say how your sampling design, sampling technology, your statistical methods, your procedures might have affected the results. So all these things can be elaborated and discussed in the second aspect. And third, you can say how your study could be improved further. See, you have done a study, okay? As a researcher, you may be knowing what are the problems, what are the limitations you had for your study. Now, in the discussion section, you can very well tell how this study might have been improved, would have been improved. Maybe you can say that I would have included more participants, the study might have been better, our results might be different. Or you can say that by mistake, I used questionnaire, I might have used schedule, that might have been given better results. Or you can say that I might have used some other measure of collecting data, something like that, you can tell. Apart from that, even you can talk about the degree of error. So what will be the degree of error that you may have in your research work? Because every research may have some errors. If at all your research has got some kind of potential problems, so whatever problems you face in your research work can be spelled out in this particular components. See, what are the potential errors? See, I have read in some papers, they say that the participants are not true. They are not truthful. So they just gave some fake information or false information. Or you can say that there was a problem with me, the way I asked the questions. So instead of asking open questions, I asked leading questions. So what are the leading questions? For example, see, you are giving a particular video. Okay, you are giving a video to a particular audience, a reader, is a respondent. You are asking them to view the video. Once the video is watched, See, you can ask a question like this. How do you feel after watching that video clip? So this is a question I should ask. But my mistake, I ask a question, a leading question, I ask a question this way. Do you feel more aggressive after watching that video clip? See, we are suggesting the answer for the respondents. So that kind of questions I added more in numbers. So my results were not so accurate. So whatever potential problems, whatever the degree of errors you face in your research component, research work, all those things can be spelled out in this particular section. Then comes fourth component. What about the future direction for the research? So if somebody is going to do any research by expanding, modifying, or elaborating on my topic, what are the proper areas for them on which they can continue, they can expand my research work? We can give a hint in the discussion section. Then comes, what about the practical applications of research? You have done some results, you got some research results also, and how these results are going to be useful. Are they offering any solution? Are they offering any course of action for giving some remedy to a social problem? Or you can just go and tell how these results matter to the people. Fine. So these 5 components can be included in the discussion section. You see here now, when you write this discussion, you say that our studies are consistent with those of. You can say that my study is not consistent with these studies. So you can have all these discussion. To what extent your findings are in line with the findings of others? To what extent your findings are against or contrasting with the findings of others? Where your study stands in the world research output context? What is the contribution of your research paper in the particular research field? So all these things need to be given in the discussion section. Then comes conclusion. Always in the conclusion, you should restate your answer to your research question. So whatever research question, whatever hypothesis, whatever primary claim you had in your studies, all those things are to be restated and justified in your conclusion. And apart from that, you can provide recommendations for future studies or changes that need to be made in the practice. Fine, good. Maybe after the conclusion, whatever references you use for your research purpose, all the references will be listed either in the alphabetical order or in the order of their appearance in the text of your research paper. Okay, that's about components of a social science research paper. Apart from the general structure I discussed in the first part of this webinar, the second part, I am just giving you what are the specific components that are applicable to papers being published in social sciences and the papers being published in sciences. Fine. Now let me get into the science subjects. So what can be the components that you need to address, that you need to take care while you're preparing a manuscript in the field of sciences? So normally in science, they follow IMROD format for scientific papers. IMROD format, it stands for introduction. I stands for introduction, where you talk about the question. Then you talk about M, methods. You just tell the participant how you try to find out the answer of a particular question. Then R stands for results. You're telling what are the results of your research studies. And D stands for discussion. You explain to what extent your findings are going to be useful for the people. Fine. So as far as science papers are concerned, so normally we don't find a lengthy introduction or background literature for science subjects. They always make it very brief. So please make it sure that you are giving only adequate background for your research work. You can avoid detailed background information. You can state the objectives of your research work in the introduction part. Fine. Then comes method section, a very, very important section. See, please understand before we see what we are going to include in method section, you should understand what is the purpose of including a materials and methods or method section science papers. Basically, they have two purposes. One is the people, those who are going to read your method section, should be able to replicate what you did. That means whatever you did in the experiment in your laboratory, even the other person also should be able to execute the same experiment in his laboratory. Fine. Why? Maybe they want to test it, whether whatever you have done is correct or not, or they may want to do further research. So once you have found something, the other researchers may start from your finding, they'll find something more, something deeper. This is one reason. Second reason is that why the purpose of method section is you have to allow others to evaluate what you did. So you have done something, you find out something, you say that I have invented a beautiful ink that will disappear in 2 minutes. If you write in 2 minutes, the ink will disappear. If you claim so, the others will see whether the conclusion, the finding, what you reached is correct or not. They want to determine it. And apart from that, they want to check whether the findings you had for your research work can be applied in other environments, maybe in cold regions, maybe in hot regions, maybe in developed countries, maybe in developing countries, maybe underdeveloped countries, in various situations that it can be applied. So for these two purposes, the method section should be very appropriate and contain all the required information. Fine. So when you're talking about the method, whatever method you have adopted for your research work, what about the quantum of information that need to be mentioned about that method? So very simple. You should talk about the overview of study design. So whatever study design you plan for your research work, that is to be explained your study design. Maybe yes, a survey type or maybe kind of experimentation, participant experimentation, non-participative experimentation, something like what are the kind of laboratory or non-laboratory designs you follow. Then comes what are the equipments, what are the organisms, what are the reagents you are planning to use for your research work. Then what is the population of your research study? Whether you're going to do a research on human population, are you going to do something on animal? If it also, whether you got any ethical approval from the authorized approval committees. Then comes what are the statistical methods that you are going to use for your research purpose. Fine. Okay, go. Then, so when you're talking about a specific method, maybe in boiling water or in producing a particular chemical, whenever you're planning to use a particular method, and what kind of information you need to give about the particular method. See, if it is a very, very well-known method, very popular method in your field, you need not give elaborate discussion about that method. You can just tell the name of the method, you can go ahead with the citation. So suppose if you are used a particular method which is not very popular among your field, then what you can do is that you can give a description about the method that you adopted and then give reference. Suppose if it is your own method, sir, I have not followed anybody's method. I have developed my own method. In that case, what you can do is that you should give a complete, elaborate explanation on your method. Fine, because others may not be knowing anything about your method. It is your own method. So you should give an elaborate account of your own method. Fine. And if at all you are making use of any apparatus, any instruments, any tools for research purpose, then you need to mention, maybe in circular brackets, the brand or make of that particular machine. For example, I am using one Amax MLCD transition, which was manufactured by Jasco company. The machine model is FB6300. So that kind of information also need to be given in the case of methods. Okay, you can see here, I just went through some of the articles, I found these things. See, in one of the science papers, very popular, high impact factorful research paper, they have included even these things. See, graphite powder, natural. Graphite powder was purchased from so-and-so. Aqueous solution is purchased from so-and-so. And they were used directly without further purification. And ultra pure water was produced by so-and-so company. So they give very, very clearly what is the material they used. And they tell you here, see, preparation of graphene oxide. So they say they have made use of Hummer's method, a popular method, a well-known method of preparing this natural graphite. Okay, so they talk about the method, they talk about the materials, how you acquire those materials, whether you are using them in the raw form, whether you are purifying them and using it. If you are purifying, what method you follow for purification. So all these things are given in the science papers. Then what about the instruments, what you use? So they say that electrochemical experiments were carried out using a CHI 660D electrochemical analyzer. So they say very, very clearly. And they say that the units are measured in saturated KCA solution. And they're making use of CV, DPV. So whatever instruments they're using, they're giving complete information about the instruments that they are using. Fine. Then comes methods. How to write about methods? So methods, information about the method should be written in past tense. And some journals, they may permit you to have different subheadings. You can follow that. And even in the method section, you can have your own tables and figures. For example, when you're talking about the methods you followed in conducting a particular lab experiment, You can have flow chart. A flow chart tells graphically what are the various stages, steps in conducting your research. You can show the diagrams of apparatus. Whatever apparatus you followed, you used, you can show the diagram of your apparatus in your method section. And apart from that, very importantly, you have to talk about experimental conditions. So what is the particular experimental condition in which you carried out your experiment? You can say that I kept the room temperature 27 degrees Celsius. You can say that water was boiled at 104 degrees Celsius, something like that. So whatever with the experimental condition in which you conducted your research, those things can be given in the method section. Fine. So you can see an example. The method section 1, author says, sketch of a microfluidic device used. So they are given diagram of the apparatus they used. In the method section, please see that you are not going to give very, very detailed, a lot of unnecessary details in the method section. You need not tell the participants that you should get up, go to kitchen, you have to take the lighter, you have to turn the gas on, you should light the gas, and you should take the wooden sill, you should pour water, you should keep it on the stove. No need. You need not give these kind of elaborate, unnecessary details in your method section. Okay, so you have to make it very, very simple. See, if you feel that your audience is somebody who may not be having much idea about the process or methods, then you can give some bit extra information. If you feel that the purpose of my paper is to reach the very, very, very good audience, those having a rich experience in the particular field, then you can make it very simpler because they're all the experts in the field. They know the process. You need not give a lot of information. So depending on the audience, but see that either you are giving less information or you are giving required information, but you are not giving any unnecessary details in the method section. Fine. Okay, method section is clear. Then comes the results. So result section is the core of your paper. And in this section, you are going to summarize two kinds of results. One is whatever experimentations, whatever experiments you conducted, results of all those experiments. Secondly, after getting the experimental results, you will subject all these experimental results to some statistical analysis. And whatever results you get out of those statistical tests, both these things are to be summarized in the result section. If you want, you can include tables, you can figures, absolute no problem. But make sure that you are providing enough raw data. Your raw data is very, very important because once you provide your raw data, this data will be used by other researchers or recognized institutions to check the validity of your research. Fine. And please understand, here you are giving only summary. You are not going to interpret, you are not going to discuss any of your results. But in some science papers, I could see both the result section and discussion section are combined together and they are presenting it as a single section. Even that is the most welcoming concept these days. Fine. And when you're presenting the results, you're supposed to use past tense. For example, you can say total of so-and-so patients showed, increase, decrease, depth was. So use a past tense. Then what are the common mistakes that you make it happen in the result section? Sometimes illogical sequence of data presentation. When you're presenting the results of your study, the results are not presented in a logical way. You don't have a logical method of presenting data. That is a problem. Then comes inaccurate data. So findings are okay, but when you're reporting the findings, you fail to report your results accurately. And thirdly, repetition. See, they're going to give you an example. In one particular work, information is available here. The same information is given the table, and the same information what is given the table is given as a figure also. That is what many of us do. Okay, maybe if you take a particular case, we give the figure, we give the table, we give the explanation. If you read, all the three things will be the same thing. So that kind of repetition should be avoided in the result section. And sometimes people misplace the information. That means the information that is to be given in the method section, result section, they are given the discussion section. The information that is to be given the discussion section, that is given the result section. That's why I told in these days, nowadays, both the sections in many cases they were merged and they have a single section called results and discussion. Okay. Now let's come to discussion 4. So once the results are summarized and presented, then you have to discuss. So what is the purpose of this section? To interpret and compare the results. You have to interpret why the results have come this way. What could be the possible reasons for this kind of research output? And even please understand, especially in science, when you're doing a research, if there is an uncertainty in your research, there's an area wherein you encountered some kind of uncertainty. You don't know actually why it has happened so. You're not aware of the reason for a particular product turned out in a particular way. So you should tell even this uncertainty in your research paper, because the other researchers may take a note of this uncertainty and they may try to find out the answer for that kind of uncertain situations. Fine. And you have to always relate your work to past work. See, if you're doing a research on a particular scientific, for me, on artificial intelligence, you're doing a research, and maybe on graph theory. So you have to correlate, you have to contrast your results with the results of previous researchers. And if you feel that your experiments show that, for example, you want to say that my experiments, I have stopped here and it is to be taken further. How it is to be taken further? It needs further experimentation. Those things can be discussed in the discussion section. Okay, fine, good. And please understand, discussion part is not given in a lengthy paragraph. You should have very short paragraph. Let us not have too lengthy discussions. And the normal rule is that, for example, if your research paper is 10 pages, the discussion section, sometimes results come discussion section, should not exceed 5 pages. There's a normal rule. Okay. And always when you're discussing, you tell about the finding and then you discuss. That is the way you provide discussions. Okay. When you want to comment on the particular finding, you give the result, you summarize the result, and then you provide all the discussions on that particular key summary. And when you're presenting the discussion section, you should move from specific to general. See, please understand, when you're talking about the introduction, we start from general. We generally talk about the people's problem. Then we go to cancer. We go to breast cancer. We go to blood cancer. But here, we talk about very specific. We talk about this particular finding and we try to apply this finding in general terms. Okay. And if at all you framed any hypothesis for your research work, then in the discussion section, you should analyze whether you are accepting or rejecting. If you're accepting, why? If you're not accepting, why? So all those rational discussion on hypothesis should be taking place here. Fine. Then you're always, especially in science field, you should always link your research results to the previous, either your own findings or the findings of others. You should compare your present findings with your previous past findings, or compare your present findings with the findings of other researchers. You find out where you are correlating with others, where and all you are deviating and contrasting with others. And probably you may have to have a few line of thoughts on how the findings of present research work can be practically applied, where my finding can be used, whether in the public policy, in healthcare industry, or wherever my findings can be used. Practical implications or possible uses of your findings come. And what are the common mistakes people normally make is that, see, they may not be able to interpret the findings correctly. Some of the important results they might have discussed very leniently, or they may be omitting to discuss some of the very important findings. Sometimes they give very, very long, verbose explanations. Sometimes they fail to identify the weakness. Okay, they don't find out the weakness of their research study. Fine. And sometimes simply they give some conclusions without providing supporting findings. See, you should have very, very strong finding. Based on that, you should establish the conclusion for your research work. Fine. So then comes, once the discussion part is over, then comes conclusion. The conclusion, you are going to give an overall view of your study and how your study can be taken in the future. You can just speculate about your future work, and you can say how your present work can be impact on other areas, and how your interpretation and other things get related to the original problem. It's very, very important. So what is the original problem you started with in the introduction part? and how your findings are related to the original question, whether they're able to answer the question or not. So that is how we can write your conclusion. Okay, once these things are over, starting with the introduction, then methodology along with the reviews, then findings, then discussion, then the rest of the issues follow. Sometimes you may have appendices. You may have more. If you're having more than one appendix, then you can number it as A, B, C. If you're having separate set of appendices for formulae and equations, we can give separate numbers, equation 1, equation 2, or formulae 1, formulae 2. Fine. A question comes is, sir, what kind of things can be given as appendices? Can I have a raw data or extra photographs or whatever formula you use in your research work? Can give an explanation for all the formulae in your appendix. What if you're not used any specialized computer program for a particular procedure? You can mention about that in your appendix. Or if you use some kind of chemicals or components you feel that which is not very common among your community, you can explain all those things in appendix. And if you're using any specially prepared apparatus for your research work, you can give a diagram of all those apparatus in the appendix section. Then, and in science field, very importantly, many researchers, they get fund from various funding agencies, whether Bill Gates Foundation or Indian Department of Science and Technology, or WHO or UNESCO. So they are getting funds from many funding bodies. They do research. So if at all you are receiving any fund and do research, then that funding body information should be given in your research paper. So there is a standard for that. Something like this: grand number. Okay, United States instead of peace, grand number. Or you can say Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, within bracket, within square bracket, grand number. So grants, whenever you receive, grand number should be specifically mentioned. You can ask the question, sir, if I have not received any fund, no problem. If you have not received any fund for conducting a particular research work, then you can mention that I have not received any fund from anybody for conducting this particular science research work. You can very well say. See, you can see here, financial support for this study was provided by so and so. So they are giving information about the funding bodies. Here you can see here another example I just got from a particular journal article. Financial support and sponsorship nil. That means I have not received any funding. Okay, fine. Now, as far as science is concerned, be very, very careful with the nomenclature and units. So what is the nomenclature, naming system I have to use for chemistry or physics or inorganic chemistry or botany or zoology or mathematics? Please understand, you are following the internationally accepted rules and conventions. For example, if you're talking about the chemistry nomenclature, the very, very popular standard is International Union of some chemistry related some organization. So they have released a standard for a nomenclature of organic chemistry. You can very well make use of it. And as far as units are concerned, please remember you are making SI units, system of international units. If you are using some other units, you can kindly convert those units into SI units, and that also should be provided in your research papers. So please take well care of these nomenclature and international units in terms of your science research paper. See, when you're talking about max formulae, whatever max formula you are using in your research work, please understand that max equations are given as editable text. Okay, not as images. You should give them as editable text. If the equation is a small one or simpler one, you can use the kind of sorted, the slash you can use instead of using other kind of presentations. And please understand, very well in science, variables are to be presented in italics. Very well, whatever variables used, they are to be presented in italics. And whatever equations you are using, suppose if you are using 3, 4, 5 equations, these equations are to be numbered sequentially, numbered consecutively in your research paper. For example, here is a journal article. You can see here 1A, 1B, 1C, 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D. So these are the numbers they give for their equations. And here see, equation 7, independent equation 7, 8A, 8B, then 9, independent equation. If you feel so, equations are to be numbered very, very sequentially. Then comes videos. See, sometimes if you're talking about some original research results and you're planning to send your articles to Elsevier or Science Direct, Even they are asking for the videos, the videos of your research work, the videos that may support and enhance your scientific research. So they're asking for a video of your research paper. So what you can do is that along with your research paper, we can submit a video also. So this video link will be provided in the online edition, the offline edition. In the online edition, the video link will be available. If you click it, you'll be able to see the video presented by the particular author. Fine. Okay. Then comes supplementary material. As far as science is concerned, apart from your research paper, you can use a lot of things as supplementary materials, maybe some applications, maybe images, maybe sound clips, Excel files, or PPT files. So all those things can be given as supplementary files along with your main research papers. So please understand, whenever you are giving all these supplementary materials, each and every supplementary material should be properly labeled. You should do a very, very concise but descriptive caption for each and every supplementary file, and that is to be submitted to the publishers. Then comes recently the practice of the researchers submitting their research data takes place. See, if you're doing a research on a particular component or compound, see, whatever real data, original data you have with which you conducted your research, that original data also need to be deposited along with your research paper. Okay, some institutions, they ask very specifically that you should submit your research data. You can ask a question, sir, where can I go and submit my research data? So some publishers, they provide their own research data provision, repository provision. If you give the data, they will link. Otherwise, there are private repositories, for example, something like TAIR, something like CGDC, something like PDB. They're all different databases where you have to pay little money to store your data over there. After depositing data over there, collect the link of your data and give it to the publishers. So they will add this link also in your research paper. For people like us who may not be able to pay money for storing our data, we have Mendeley Open Data. You know about Mendeley, a very popular reference management software. So Mendeley is offering a space where you can go and deposit your research data. You'll get a link for your data repository, and that link can be given to the publishers. And nowadays, many publishers, they accept a Mendeley data repository link. Fine. For example, this is a Mendeley website. Mendeley discover Mendeley data, and here you can see recently added research data. So whatever data is recently uploaded with the researchers, you can take it from even Mendeley data with open data. Fine. Then comes article enhancement. Sometimes the publishers may ask you to provide an audio slide. That means your entire research paper, you will be giving an audio talk on your research paper, so that the audio slide presentation will enhance the value of your research work. The people, those may not be able to read and understand better, be able to listen to you and grasp what you are trying to say in author's own words. That is kind of initiative. Then comes interactive MATLAB figure viewer. Sometimes if you are working with MATLAB and if you have got some results from MATLAB, you can present to the publishers, and they will publish this particular image as a MATLAB figure viewer itself. So if anybody is viewing them online, they can click it. They'll be able to read the image or graph in the MATLAB viewer itself. And sometimes publishers, they ask for interactive plots, a plot which shows a movement, which is in action. If you click the image will show how it was 10 years before, how it is now, how it will be featured. That kind of interactive plots also can be incorporated as a part and parcel of your research work. Dear friends, as far as science is concerned, a lot of innovative things are coming up in this world. You should be able to explore all these things and be ready for that. So far I talked to you about the different components of science and social science papers. But this is the overview of peer review process. See, if you are submitting the paper, the publishers will confirm your paper. Yes, we have received your paper. They will send a message. Then they will take an initial decision. Okay, sometimes they say that no, this particular paper doesn't come under the purview of our research team, or this doesn't fit into the theme of our journal, so it is rejected. Or they will decide to review. They will assign reviewers. They will send your papers to reviewers. The reviewers will send, yes, okay, we are ready to review this so-and-so paper. The reviewers will give the acceptance, and then the reviewers, after reviewing, they will review reports. The report can ask you to revise the paper. They will give you suggestions. What are the areas where you can give suggestions? And they may accept your papers. If it's accepted, they'll be sending it to publishing. The paper will be published. If they are deciding to reject your paper, they'll give the reason and they'll be rejecting your paper. If you're asking you to revise the paper, then you get the paper, revise the paper, send them once again. They will receive the paper. They will check the revised paper and they will say okay, and then the paper will be published. So it's the overall view of a peer review process. Fine. But be very, very careful with the two things. While you're preparing and presenting any research, either social science and science, please understand there is a plague of plagiarism. So plagiarism is nothing but copying the content of others without properly acknowledging them. Be very, very careful with plagiarism. These days, many journals, they will accept your papers only on the condition that the similarity index of your paper is less than 5% or less than 10%. Okay, so be very careful with plagiarism. Then comes research ethics and publishing ethics. Whenever you are conducting research, whenever you are publishing your research, please follow the ethics which are laid for the purpose. So data modification, data falsification, changing the data without collecting data, you are making your own data, or after getting some results, you are changing the results to suit your own requirements. So all these unethical practices are to be avoided when you talk about conducting research and publishing research. So dear friends, whether you are preparing a social science paper or science paper, that is immaterial. First of all, you have to write the first draft, repeat it, again repeat it, read it, go through it, comment on that, refine it, keep on polishing, make further changes. Then if you feel that you have done some solid work, then you give it to your friends, your collaborators, advisors, your friends, your enemies, your friends, your students, you give it to everybody. You ask them, go through, you collect their comments. The comments are valid, you incorporate all the comments. Fine. Then keep the paper in the drawer, sleep for 10 days. 11th day, wake up again take the paper, go through the fresh ideas. So you keep on revising the draft till you get a satisfaction that you have prepared a well-proof paper. Fine. So it's not an easy job, but you should write, because as somebody told, you fail only if you stop writing. So the science proved that if you are having the practice of writing at least 5 to 10 minutes every day for a couple of months, your productivity, your writings will be far better than those who don't write at all. So let us write more papers, whether you belong to science stream or you belong to social science stream. I wish you all the best. You try to prepare very good papers, publish them in highly impact journals, and bring laurels both to you and your institution. So thank you, friends, for having patiently listened to my two of my presentations. Thank you, participants, and thank you, organizers, for having given me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much.